Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with another one. My boys, Vlad, Barry, and today we got a special guest. Patriots. He covers the Patriots for NBC Sports Boston. He's been doing that since 2011. And you can see him on YouTube in the My Next Pats podcast. You'll see him with Tommy Curran weekly on YouTube as well. It's Phil Perry, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a good time chopping it up with you guys on some Patriots stuff here.
Absolutely, man. I think first thing I want to know is why does Tom E. Curran introduce you as the senator? What's up with that?
So I'll tell you the origin story, and then the best interaction that I've ever heard because of that. It really is based off nothing at all other than I think he saw me show up right around the first time I started going on TV was for Quick Slants. And I don't think he had ever seen me in a blazer or whatever. So we don't even get that dressed up, but button down and blazer. I was editing for our website at Comcast Sportsnet at the time a lot. And so I'm wearing whatever, it's pretty casual when you're just at the desk. So I think he just saw me dressed up one day and he's like, a very senatorial look about you. I mean, you look like you could be down in Washington. So that was it. And that's all. Next thing I knew, I had a nickname for the rest of my life. But the best is when we've had, this has happened multiple times, actually. We've had people comment, usually on Facebook. I don't know, maybe that's telling us the kind of people that are following us on Facebook. But when we would post videos on Facebook, you get comments that would be like, I really like this guy's Patriots coverage. He seems to have some pretty logical analysis. But is anybody else a little concerned about the fact that he's not taking care of his constituents? Doesn't he have a day job that he should be paying a little bit more attention to? He's he spent all of his time watching the Patriots and talking to Bill Belichick at his press conferences. What is this guy doing? Our hard-earned tax dollars are going to this guy's Patriots coverage and not to his work as a senator. So I'm afraid it's taken literally years, which is absolutely incredible.
That's hilarious. People really take that and run away
comical.
with it, man.
Oh, that's
It's
amusing. People
wild.
really say that too, Bill. Wow, unbelievable.
That's why you got to watch out for the comment sections on Facebook. You never know what you might see in there.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So, Phil, obviously, we're here to
is.
talk about, the Patriots and everything they got going on. But, I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't talk about all the crazy quarterback movements that's happening in the league right now. Have you ever seen, quarterback movements like this?
Never. I mean, remember when Tom Brady unretiring was the biggest news of the day? That felt like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Right. Facts.
Quarterbacks moving left and right. I can't remember anything like it before, particularly for our purposes, right? Following the Patriots, seeing all this quarterback talent and all of this talent that it's not just about the quarterbacks, although the quarterbacks are the major piece of it. It's about the passing game in general, right? So you're seeing all this talent, quarterbacks, receivers, talent that's paid to stop opposing quarterbacks, pass rushers, corners, getting massive contracts. And a lot of them, again, from the Patriots point of view, not so great because a lot of them are migrating from the NFC to the AFC. You're talking about Russell Wilson or Devontae Adams or Chandler Jones or today Matt Ryan going from the Falcons to the Colts. The AFC is absolutely loading up, whether it's the AFC North, the AFC West. The Bills continue to add talent. They added Jamison Crowder today to play the slot receiver spot for them. So, man, it's been a wild offseason, and it's all been centered around the passing game because, let's be honest, that's what wins in today's NFL.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Do you think that's probably why Tom Brady decided to come back? Because there's like nobody in his, in the NFC now. It's like, dude, this is a piece of cake this year. Other than the Rams and maybe the 49ers, you got Packers too. You got like nobody really to compete with out there.
Well, and even the Packers. I mean, I question Aaron Rodgers' decision to make sure that he's back in Green Bay if you're not going to have your number one guy there. I mean, who is he throwing to right now? Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a free agent. They brought back Alan Lazard. I mean, that's a team that could – I mean, they'll always be in it because of Rodgers, but, man, they could have a hard time. But you're right. What it felt like was Brady decided he was coming back, and then everyone else just said, okay, check you later. We're out. Find me a team in the AFC. I'll take my chances over there.
$230 million, all guaranteed to Deshaun Watson, man. Like, you think the Browns had to do that to secure his service, or you think that's why they were able to land him because they guaranteed the whole contract?
I think that had to have been a huge part of it because I know there were people in Cleveland in the building there that really felt like they were out of this. Once it was announced that he had removed them from the equation, like that felt like it was it. But there were some other discussions, my understanding, between Deshaun Watson's agent and the Browns. The Athletic reported, that there was another client that shared the same agent, and Deshaun Watson's name just popped back up, and they talked about what they might be able to do to get themselves back in the mix. But again, it just tells you how important it is to be not just set at that position, but elite at that position, and to have an elite passing offense. The Browns to extend themselves the way they did for a guy who's a great player, and it's so rare to get that caliber of quarterback at his age on the open market, to have the opportunity to go acquire him. But huge, capital B, capital U, capital T. I mean, red flags on top of red flags. When it comes to, we know he's not going to see criminal charges brought against him. He is still facing 22 civil lawsuits, because of these sexual abuse and sexual misconduct allegations. And so, we'll see what happens with those and how that civil situation plays out. But I think you could at the very least have questions about the guy's decision making, and to make him not only your highest paid player, but the league's highest paid player, and to change, really, this is going to change contracts moving forward at the quarterback position, and maybe it has a trickle down effect on other positions. But to guarantee that sum of money, who knows who's next in line, but that's usually how it works. The next quarterback that's up, the next big name that's up, he's going to look at the Deshaun Watson deal and say, I want that and more. And so this is going to have huge ramifications for the entire league moving forward. And again, it just tells you how far teams will be willing to go to make sure they have the right kind of player at that position.
Do you think GMs and owners are a little upset about this, guaranteeing that much money? So now, like you said, this is going to affect everything else, because as the next person is going to get something even bigger, right?
They can't be thrilled about it. They can't. I mean, I think I would look at the Patrick Mahomes deal and say that that's one that actually would look pretty palatable to GMs and to owners, especially across the league, and say, okay, we know like the average annual value on that kind of deal looks huge right now, but the cap's going to go up every year. We're going to get this huge inflow of money. And by the time he gets to the end of his contract, he still might be one of the best or the best quarterbacks in the league. And that contract might actually look pretty reasonable. So that, if that continued to be the sort of high end for contracts at that position, I think the league, meaning the owners, would have been happy with that. But now you have Deshaun Watson, who, again, you're going to have quarterbacks that are, completely spotless in terms of their off the field reputation, who are maybe not as good as Deshaun Watson, but in similar tiers. And they're going to look at this contract and they're going to say, the Browns were willing to give that guy with red flags on top of his red flags. They were willing to give that guy 230 guaranteed. We're starting there. Okay. And then we'll work off of that. So to your point, that's a good one. The owners can't be thrilled about that, even though they're going to be continuing to make money hand over fist.
Yeah, I think one thing for sure we can all agree on: we're all in the wrong business. We should all be quarterbacks.
If only I had practiced a
man.
little harder.
A little bit. Picked up a ball earlier on. But yeah, man. Let's move on to the Patriots, who let's face it, this year it's nothing like last year, right? We spent the most money in free agency last year. I think it was in history, and this year it doesn't look like we're trying to do anything. There's not much going on. What is the thought of the Patriots going into the draft and this free agency?
Yeah, back to normal. That's what I was told. Was the best way to describe the Patriots' offseason approach thus far. When I spoke to an AFC executive recently, and I think the rest of the league looks at this and says, that's the Bill Belichick we know. That's the New England Patriots we know. No splashes on the first couple of days of free agency. Wait until the second week. Make a couple of smaller moves here and there to try to fill out your roster. And I think it goes back to a couple of different things. Number one, they spent so much last offseason that they knew they were not going to be spending at that same level this year, even though there were a number of different things they could do to play with their salary cap and get some bigger contracts onto their books if they were willing to spend real money. But as we know, this is the real world. Teams operate with budgets. Owners operate with budgets. They're also trying to figure out, I think, where they're at in terms of the next wave of their franchise big picture. So the way one coach described it to me was to say, well, look at what the Patriots did after their first 3 Super Bowls, right? The first wave of their dynasty. They had 01, 03, 04 Super Bowl rings. And then the roster, it took a couple of years, but the roster sort of slowly aged out. You had a couple of big off seasons where you lost some huge pieces. Richard Seymour, Mike Vrabel, Teddy Bruschi, Troy Brown, Asante Samuel. All those guys are gone in just a couple of off seasons. But the roster gets younger, it gets cheaper, and they hit on really several drafts in a row. They got a couple players in that 08, you get Mayo and Slater. 09, you get Chung and Vollmer and Julian Edelman. In 2010, you get McCourty and Gronkowski. That might have been the biggest one for them. 11, you get Solder and Vereen. 12, you get Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower. So it's like, you've got 5 drafts there where you have the core of your next run. And then they go on another run, with a younger, little bit cheaper roster. Obviously, the constant there is Tom Brady, and that, makes everything a little bit easier to swallow. They don't have that caliber quarterback just yet, but I think that's sort of where they are. Is they're kind of slowly aging out, and we're seeing it. They're going to lose players they've already traded away Shaq Mason. They've released Kyle Van Noy. Who knows if Dante Hightower is coming back, but we're going to see some staples from this team go away again this offseason. We saw some last offseason. And they're going to just hope that they continue to hit on some of these drafts, and they'll supplement through free agency, but they really know they need to build through the draft. And they've had a couple of pretty good drafts in a row here. I really like Kyle Duggar from that 2020 draft. They're going to force Josh Uche, onto the field this year and hope that he stays healthy. They really like him. They think he can do much more than he's given them so far. Last year's draft obviously was a home run, I think. Mac Jones, Christian Barmore, and Ramondre Stevenson. So they're on their way. But I think they need a couple more before they really feel like those guys that they've drafted turn into stars and turn into real core pieces of a championship caliber team. And so it might take another year or two to get to where they want to be, but that's sort of where they're at. They're just in this slow build phase, which I know is hard for fans to swallow to a degree because the rest of the league seems to be so aggressive right now. And the money is like no object. And we're seeing teams throw it around like it's monopoly money. So it's interesting to just see the contrast in terms of how the rest of the league is attacking this offseason and how the Patriots are.
I understand your point about the slow build, but I think for a team like the Patriots that has a coach like Bill Belichick that's in his 70s, he doesn't have a long time in front of him to keep coaching. I would imagine that a slow build is not something that he's a fan of. It's not something that he would want to do. And as we can see, the AFC is getting a lot stronger as the days goes. I mean, the quarterbacks are coming to the AFC. Shouldn't that lit a fire under him and try to get some of the good players and try to go back into the playoff and not lose to the Bills without having them punt, like going more into like the chip into the conference or something like that?
I really feel like, and I know he's closer to the end than the beginning, but number one, I still don't think he's necessarily done anytime soon. That's just from talking to people around Bill who know Bill. Like, the reason Josh McDaniels is gone is because he had no idea when Bill was going to decide to finally hang it up. I think Josh McDaniels would have been open to the idea of taking over after Bill, but he didn't know when that was going to happen. And the guys that are there now still don't know when that's going to happen. And no one thinks it's going to be after this year, and very few, if any, people think it's going to be after next year. So I think this is just how Bill Belichick views the proper way to build a winning team. And obviously other teams have disproven that, but for him, it's the right way to do it. It's the more prudent way to do it. It can be a little bit slower, and maybe, he's looking at that period of time that I just referenced earlier. Maybe he's looking at that 08, 09, 10, period where, 08 Brady was hurt, but 09 and 10, they were still a really good team, even though they were kind of aging out and they really hadn't turned it over to this new core yet. Maybe he looks at that and says, we can do that again. But I think the obvious pushback would be, well, you had Tom Brady playing at, the height of his powers, essentially, to kind of make it easier to deal with. So, maybe he's assuming it'll be easier than it actually is. I don't think so, though. I think he understands this is the process, and it can be a little bit slower than fans would want. It might be a little bit painful. But for him, it's the right way to do it. And I think one thing, just talking about, his longevity and when he might decide to shut it down, I think one thing that he really will take pride in whenever this happens is when he goes, he's going to want the team to be in a good place, whoever takes over next. I think he would really view it as almost a knock on his legacy to some extent if when he leaves, the team ends up going 4-13. Even if it's not his team, because, I think he takes too much pride in his ability to build a contending team and a consistent team and a sustainable sort of performance from that team that he really wouldn't want that to happen.
As much as I think I agree with that, I think he would want to set the team up for the future. But I just feel like there's the fans' expectations, which I think we all might be a little impatient. But don't you think Robert Kraft might be a little impatient as well? I mean, let's say Bill goes into the season and it's a losing season, or the next season is a losing season. I mean, as we talked about in the beginning of the show, the AFC is a lot stronger now. If he has a couple of losing seasons, how much longer is he gonna have? How much of a chain of a leash is Robert Kraft going to have for him?
Yeah, it's a great point, because he's not getting any younger either, right? And he probably is looking at this and saying to himself, I would love to have another, bite at that Lombardi apple. And of course we all could understand that. But, my understanding of it is they really feel as though, Bill has earned the right to decide when it's over here. And maybe that changes depending on how the next few years go and how the records go and how relationships develop. But I think that's where they're at right now. And honestly, I think to an extent it gets back to the Tom Brady conversation, right? When they made the decision that they weren't going to extend themselves to keep Tom Brady around, they really tied themselves to Bill Belichick, and they believe in Bill Belichick, and they believe in his plan, and they believe in his ability to still not just coach, but to run and build a winning organization. So I think they want to let him see this thing through. And again, and who knows how long it takes. Maybe it's 2 or 3 years. Maybe there really is just one more real bite at the apple for both of these guys, Belichick and Kraft. We'll have to wait and see. But I would be surprised if ownership looked at Belichick after the 2022 season or even the 2023 season and said, "Hey, this is a disaster. We got to let you go." I think it would take a really drastic decline in terms of their record. And as talented as the rest of the conference is, I don't see that kind of drop off ahead.
We can always beat up on the Jets and the Dolphins, right?
Listen, I don't know how you guys feel about Mac Jones, but I like Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones has the potential to be a very good quarterback. And I know a lot of NFL people who feel similarly, just because of how he sees the game at such a young age and because of how important it is. And it's not a style that we're used to seeing from young players at that position win at a high level. But when you just watch quarterbacks, period, and how they operate, whether it's Brady or Rodgers or, I think Derek Carr is not a terrible comparison. Like, we're going to see Derek Carr with some real weapons around him and a really good play caller this year. And I think we're going to be talking about him as I think right now we probably consider him like a top 12-ish quarterback. I think next year he's going to be all of a sudden considered a top 7 guy, and he's going to be considered a guy you could really win with. And because of the situation. And so if they surround Mac Jones with the right pieces, I don't see a steep enough fall off that canning Bill Belichick or somehow parting ways, graciously with Bill Belichick is in the offing here.
Yeah, no, for sure. Kind of led to my first question that I wanted to ask you, Bill, a little bit, but kind of just want you to elaborate on this more in terms of Mac Jones. So, as we know, there's a lot of, not only great, but elite top-tier quarterbacks in the AFC, particularly who are young, who are 26 or younger, who are going to be playing in the league for the foreseeable future around the same time as a Mac Jones. So I wanted to ask you, Bill, can Mac Jones be a top-tier guy and be as good as Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and I mean, you name the rest of the guys that are, young and really good quarterbacks. Like, can he be at that level? Because to me, if the Patriots are going to have a chance to contend and get back to getting a bite of that Lombardi trophy, as we're just speaking of, he's going to need to get to that level sooner than later. And I don't know how quickly he can really get there, or if he is capable of getting there at some point in his career. So what are your thoughts on that?
This meshes well with our discussion in the offseason too, and the inactivity that the Patriots have really shown through the first, week or so. They have to give him a chance to be great. That's how I would put it. I'm not willing to put a ceiling yet because I don't know if the ceiling's Derek Carr. I don't know if the ceiling's Drew Brees. I know that's a comparison that's been thrown around by some people as somebody, never had an incredibly strong arm, who probably was a little bit better athlete, but was never an amazing athlete either. He was, a true pocket passer, accurate. But again, another guy who was surrounded by amazing talent and with a great play caller and good protection. Those are the 3 Ps that you hear scouts throw around all the time. And all of those quarterbacks that you mentioned, what's the constant? They all have ridiculous playmakers around them, whether it's Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or it's Justin Herbert with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and a good run game, or, Russell Wilson's going to have great talent in Denver. Right? Like I said, Derek Carr, great talent. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, is Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce through the first, several years of his career? I don't think so.
Probably not.
He's a great player, but
yeah, no question.
He's got help. And Mac Jones does not have that kind of help right now. I like Kendrick Bourne. I know Mac Jones really likes Kendrick Bourne, and I think you're going to see that relationship develop even more in year 2. And I like what Hunter Henry was able to do for them last year. But those are nice complementary pieces, I think, on a great team. They're not star pieces. And star quarterbacks have star pass catchers around them. It's no coincidence Tom Brady in 2019 has the season he has, which is a good but not great season for the Patriots, and then goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and immediately looks like the best quarterback in football again. I mean, you look at the weapons and you compare them one for one, and it's a joke. I mean, it's not close. Tom Brady in 2013, they go out and they draft Jimmy Garoppolo the next offseason. We're all looking at it and saying, man, Patriots must feel like Tom Brady's like in a little bit of decline. And the numbers in 2013 would suggest that he was. But you end up figuring out ways to surround him with more weaponry, those next few years. 2017, he's got Julian Edelman actually gets hurt that year, but he's got Rob Gronkowski and Brandon Cooks, who all Brandon Cooks does is put up 1,000-yard seasons wherever he goes, just about every single year. And he wins the MVP. So, he got better. I'll give him credit for that. He improved his own skill set. Maybe he improved his focus a little bit. But there's no coincidence that these quarterbacks that are great have great people around them. And that would be my biggest concern if I'm a Patriots fan for Mac Jones in year 2, is that they just haven't done enough to surround him with enough, whether it's playmakers, play caller, who we still don't know who that's going to be. And if it's, whoever it is, it's going to be somebody who's relatively inexperienced. And protection, I still have questions about the protection. You lost both starting guards.
Me too.
One of the best guards in football, Shaq Mason, goes to Tampa. I like Mike Owenu, but he's not the same player yet as Shaq Mason. And now you still don't even know who's playing left guard. So good for them. They brought Trent Brown back. I thought that was a big move.
Thank God.
Because when he's been on the field, he's been pretty good, but I think you got more to try to help your young quarterback reach his ceiling. I'm not sure we'll even know, what Mac Jones' ceiling will be after year 2, because I still am not sure that he's going to be surrounded with the kind of talent that other great quarterbacks are. There's still time. There's still moves that they could make in free agency. Odell Beckham's still out there. There's great receiver talent in the draft. There's good offensive line talent in the draft as well. So we'll see on that if they're able to do a little bit more for him. But that's my answer on Mac Jones' ceiling, is just we can't know until the Patriots make the kinds of moves that the rest of the league is making to maximize what they're getting from their quarterbacks.
Phil, I think we've been a little selfish because we had you overtime. Barry, I didn't know if you have a last question before we let Phil go.
So yeah, last question for you, Bill, is who is some of your favorite Patriot players that you've covered over years while you've covered with the team, and like a favorite moment that you have since with the Patriots since you've been covering them?
There's so many. I've been very lucky, been able to cover this team really through that whole second phase of the dynasty. I grew up here. I'm from the Boston area, went to high school at BC High, big weekend, by the way, for BC High. Division I state championship, boys basketball team.
Yeah.
Yes, shout out to them. Absolutely.
Lights out. They were doing things. Now I didn't play much. I was on the team when I was there, and we had some pretty good teams. We were not throwing down alley-oops that were half court, one hand, left-handed, reaching back and putting it away the way that those kids are. My Lord, they were talented group. So congratulations to those guys. But while I was there, I was a huge Patriots fan. And they were winning Super Bowls. They won their first one. I was a sophomore in high school. So been very lucky. Some of the best guys I would put Brady near the top just because Brady was so gracious to me, even as a relative newcomer. He had guys that covered and women who covered him from the moment he walked through the door. And I know he had great relationships with a lot of them, but he was often available and always gracious with his time. And I felt like I learned a lot from him, having a few conversations with him, whether it's talking about protecting his own receivers. That's probably maybe the longest conversation I ever had with the guy, was all the things that quarterbacks can do. And he actually spoke about it a little bit more publicly in Tampa about a year ago or so, talking about how the quarterback position, it's skill-wise, has diminished a little bit because the game has changed, and a lot of these big hits have been legislated out of the game, that quarterbacks don't have to do as much anymore to protect their guys. And he thinks it's led to worse quarterback play. But we had a long conversation about that, about Gronk in particular, because there's one route right up the seam where Gronk would just get lit up, and he tore his ACL on a big hit up the seam. He broke a rib on a big hit up the seam, messed up his back on a big hit up the seam. Anyway, Brady was great. some of the less heralded guys who I've really enjoyed covering because they've taught me a lot about the game are really the staples of the team this last decade or so. Devin McCourty, Matthew Slater, Dante Hightower. Had really great relationships with those guys, and they've taught me a lot. Like I can remember a few years ago being in the locker room talking with Hightower about, how to defend the zone run play that we're seeing all across the league now, right? In the Shanahan offense and the McVay scheme. And Hightower, I think, is a hands-on instructor. We'll just put it that way. And this guy is probably the most powerful human being I've ever been in contact with. And he's showing me what he does to blockers, treating me as a blocker, following me around the Patriots locker room, not trying to, but he just was. So had a lot of great memories like that covering that team. Hopefully we'll be back in locker rooms soon, because I think it helps our coverage. I think it helps us develop relationships with guys. Malcolm Butler, that's one more. As a guy who visited the Patriots today, and I wouldn't be shocked if they made a move there. I talked to an evaluator today who said, hey, you didn't play last year, but that 2020 film of Malcolm Butler, his twitch is still there, still quick, still good ball skills, still good instincts. So, he's 32. He's not going to be a long-term answer at corner, but they still need a starter at corner. So it wouldn't shock me if they figured something out there. But I loved talking to Malcolm Butler his rookie year. So before he was famous, but team all year long, and he was one of the few guys, media being media, and players don't often want to just be hanging out in the locker room while we're there, right? Malcolm didn't care because nobody cared to talk to Malcolm. So nobody bothered him. So he said, why should I not be in my locker on my phone doing whatever I need to do to get ready for practice? And so not wanting to talk to media people because, Lord knows, if I got to talk to the Tom Currans and the Tom Gileses of the world, like any more than I already do, I'll go crazy. So I used to bother Malcolm all the time. All the time and talk about his life, at West Alabama. And I remember talking about the food he would get at West Alabama. Those guys were eating McDonald's. They were buying their own protein shakes at gas stations, near campus, because they weren't given that kind of stuff. Division II programs. So his mind was blown by all the stuff he was getting at Gillette Stadium back in 2014. So those are the kinds of conversations, kinds of interactions that I like to look back on and think about. And then obviously to think about what Malcolm did later that year, and knowing how I don't think he felt out of place because he was always a confident guy, but knowing that he knew what a different world he was in than just 4 or 5 months before. And then for him to be on the biggest stage, make the biggest play in Super Bowl history, that's always, a moment that'll stand out in my career in terms of what I've been able to see here at Foxborough.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was fascinating and amazing, and incredible insight there on all those guys. All great players and and great people, but for sure. So much appreciated for sharing that with us, Phil.
No problem, guys. It's been great talking to you. I really am glad we were able to set this up and chop it up a little bit. I'm always long-winded. I can suck the air out of an entire, especially one as small as this one. But I really appreciate you guys having me. This has been fun.
We appreciate you, man. We appreciate your coverage of the Patriots. My next pass and all that. I'm looking forward to your draft coverage and all the guys that we bring in, so you can tell us, why we picked them and all that stuff. So thanks again for coming in, man. You go ahead and go enjoy your daughter before she falls asleep, man. Have a good night.
I appreciate you guys. Yeah, hopefully we'll hit a pick or two. It's like I feel like I'm good for one every 7 or 8 years. So I'm hoping this is my year this year. But it's all
fingers crossed, man.
Yeah. Love this time of year. And like I said, happy to talk to you guys anytime. So hopefully we'll be able to catch up again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes,
love to have you back soon for sure, and talk to you some draft and how they did in the draft and stuff, and analyze their picks. We can set something up and bring you back to, to dissect and analyze the draft. I'd love that.
Love it. Yeah, let's figure it out. We'll talk soon, hopefully.
All right.
Well, for sure, we'll be in touch. Thank you,
All right,
Phil.
guys.
Appreciate
All
you.
right. All right, take
Have a
care.
good
Have a
one.
good night, guys.
All right, you too. Have a good night, Phil. Take it
Bye-bye.
easy. There it was, the great Phil Perry.
Hey man, Phil is awesome, dude. Like,
Oh yeah,
you know,
he's the man.
one thing I like about him is, you know, how, I don't know if this is insulting, how well spoken he is. Like everything just like flows, you know what I'm saying? Like when you watch his coverage of stuff, like the guy just, I don't know, everything just like, you know, um, I don't know, he's just a natural with it, man, and I'm a big fan. So if you guys want to follow Phil, it's Phil A. Perry on Twitter. You know what
No,
I'm saying? So
I
thanks again,
certainly agree
Phil.
with that,
We
John.
appreciate
Trying
that.
to cut you off, but no, he's certainly, like you said, well spoken, very articulate, like very, like high football IQ, intellectual, like definitely, very knowledgeable as we can see, like the guy we can clearly see, why he's been doing this for a while and why he's great at what he does, and and why he's been able to be successful at covering the Patriots for the amount of time that he's been covering the team. So no, he's certainly one of the best in the business, if not best. He's certainly right up there, and I think being on this podcast, we can all clearly see why that's the case. So no, definitely big shout out to Phil Perry, and we're grateful and honored that he was able to come on the podcast today with us, and look forward to having him back again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, again, we'd like to thank Phil Perry for coming on Pro Fan Sports. But another person we'd like to thank is Barry, man. Barry, you've been part of this podcast since the beginning, man, and we go through our up and downs. And thank you for coming on the show today, because we all know that you're going through something, that, I mean, to be quite honest, none of us want to go through, with the passing of your mother. So thank you for being on and having the strength to be on here. So like I said before, man, condolences to you and your family.
No, I appreciate that, John. Thanks for those kind words. Definitely, much appreciated. I'm, it's definitely been a, difficult, last few days for me and my family, to, get through the passing of my mother, who just, passed a couple of days ago. And, it's definitely, been, been a lot of emotions that have been going through, me right now. But I think I've done a pretty decent and good job in terms of, being strong, about it. I certainly get that, that strength from her. She was, a very strong woman, and certainly, just try to be able to handle that situation the best, way I can, and and be able to, honor her the best way I can. I know if she were here, she'd want me to, to be on here with you guys, and record the podcast as I did. Even as tough of a time as I'm going through, just trying to cope with this loss. I think this certainly helps, me, because as you guys, know how passionate and how much pride I take in this podcast, and that I'm extremely grateful and thankful to be part of this, and that it's meant a lot to me in my life, the last couple of years. So and she definitely inspired me to always want to be great, always, and be, the best at what you do, because, she was a extremely hard working, woman, and, had a great work ethic, and, and it was, and had a great, personality. So I think I certainly get those, qualities from her, and definitely try to, continue to do that, continue her legacy and continue to be able to do, what she doesn't want. I, remember her for. She, was, definitely a people person. She loved, people, loved, life, was always a positive, person, always had a good, vibe and good energy to her. She was, beloved, person in the community, particularly in the Cameroonian community. So it was, certainly a big loss for, all of us, since, everybody, loved her, since, she was, she was great to everybody and touched a lot of people during, her life. And, but just to quickly wrap it up, she, was going through a lot of pain, recently, the last, couple of weeks, and me and my family could see that, when she was in the hospital, that she, the suffering and the pain that she was going through, was extremely bad, and to the point where we, that knew that, her time was unfortunately coming, and and unfortunately it came, and she ended up going, and leaving us. But I feel like she's at a better place now, and can be at peace, and and be, a lot more, happier than she was in her last days, when she, had to experience all that pain and all that, suffering that, we could clearly see, witness her go through. So it's at least, the one positive and good thing I can take away from that, and that is at least she, is able to rest and not, have, and not be able to, go through that continuous amount of pain that she was going through, before she passed. So I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk about it, and to be able to, share my feelings and thoughts on the loss of my mother. And, I love her a lot, and I'm, really going to miss her, and, I already miss her a lot. So it's, been just trying to take this one day at a time, and, and get through this as much as I can. It's going to be a long process, but I'm just taking it slowly but surely, and learning, each and every day on how to cope and, mourn and deal with this significant loss in my life.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's well said. Right, like,
yeah, as John said, I mean, we none of us want to experience this, and it's unfortunate that this happened. And I'm sorry to hear, Barry, and condolences to you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care of yourself in this moment. This is not the time to, be strong and not ask for help. So, like, if you need help, definitely ask for help. And grieving is a long process, and it's not something that you want to go through by yourself. So make sure you're taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. Yeah.
No, for sure. I definitely appreciate
well
that.
said.
No, absolutely. No, I totally agree with that.
Said,
and I've definitely tried to, make sure that, I'm taking care of myself in all those aspects in the best way, I can. I'm, still struggling, with that. But, I feel like, every day it's at least gradually and getting a little bit, better in those aspects. So, I certainly appreciate both of you guys, your condolences and, and your thoughts as well. So,
Anything you need, please let us know as well.
yeah, of course. Of
Yeah,
course,
for
no,
real.
absolutely.
Barry, I
We'll
know you
do.
said
Thank you.
that. I
What's
think
up,
we did
John?
a Mother's Day episode where I think we did a Mother's Day episode where we actually said a mother's names. Name is escaping me right now. So you want to tell us your mother's name?
Yes. My mother's name was Regina Ebua, and
Regina Ebua. Well,
Ebua, and I was just gonna say, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but apparently in Italian, Regina means queen, and she was
well,
certainly
I mean,
a
it's
queen. No,
fitting,
it
right?
is absolutely. So, yeah, no, she
Fitting.
was certainly a queen, and will certainly always be with me in spirit, and will always be in my heart for forever. And I'll definitely do the best that I possibly can to make her proud, and to carry on her legacy, and and honor her in the best possible way that I can. So and I think by doing this podcast certainly is a good way to start, being able to honor her, and then carry on her legacy moving forward.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to do our usual, podcast ending. We're just going to leave it to rest in peace, Regina Ebua, man. And Barry, condolences once again.
Absolutely.
We'll see
Thank you.
you guys, and chat with you guys next episode.
Absolutely. Have a good week, everyone. See y'all next week.